Elvis Presley watched one of them from the side of the stage and took notes. One hit #1 before she could legally vote. One sang a song so dangerous, the Opry tried to ban it. It became the most important record a woman ever cut in country music history. 10 voices, buried by an industry that wasn't ready for them. Today, we bring them back. Number 10, Molly O'Day, the woman they called the female Hank Williams. Before Patsy, before Loretta, before any of them, there was Molly O'Day.
I've been lonely night and day ever since.
Born Laverne Williamson in Pike County, Kentucky in 1923, she grew up in the kind of poverty that leaves marks. Coal country, hard winters, the kind of place where music wasn't entertainment, it was survival. By the late 1940s, she was recording for Columbia Records, and the response was unlike anything Nashville had seen from a woman. Hard-edged, gospel-soaked, emotionally raw. Disc jockeys were calling her the female Hank Williams, and Hank Williams himself agreed. He reportedly said that Molly O'Day sang "Tramp on the Street" better than anyone alive.
The rich man's grave.
Think about that. Hank Williams, the Hank Williams, saying a woman sang his song better than he did. So why don't we know her name? And here's where the story takes a turn nobody expected. At the peak of her career, with radio bookings pouring in, with fan mail stacking up at the Columbia offices, with the entire Nashville machinery starting to pay attention, Molly O'Day walked away.
On that city, when I put on my robe and crown.
Not because she failed, not because she flopped. She left because of faith. Molly and her husband, Lynn Davis, became deeply committed Pentecostal Christians, and she made the decision that secular music, even country music, was incompatible with the life she wanted to live.
We have no shoes on our feet.
She stopped recording. She stepped off the stage. She walked away from a career that might have made her the biggest name in country music history. It didn't last forever. She did return to recording in the 1950s, but only gospel, only sacred music. The commercial country world never got her back. And here's what makes this story hit differently. Molly O'Day didn't lose. She chose. And there's something quietly devastating about that. A voice like that, a talent that Hank Williams himself recognized, deliberately taken off the table.
When the time will come, you'll have to say farewell.
She passed away in 1987. The Country Music Hall of Fame has never inducted her. Some voices only get one chance to be heard. Molly O'Day had that chance, and she traded it for something she valued more. Whether you call that a tragedy or an act of courage, probably says everything about who you are.
I've been lonely night and day.
Number 9, Rose Maddox, the wildest woman in country music. She was performing on California radio at 14 years old. 14.
Nevada.
Rose Maddox was born in Boaz, Alabama in 1925, and her family's story reads like something Steinbeck would have written. Sharecroppers, the Great Depression, a cross-country migration to California with almost nothing, hitching rides, sleeping in fields, scratching for work in the San Joaquin Valley alongside thousands of other Dust Bowl refugees. And somewhere in all of that hardship, Rose Maddox found her voice. By the late 1940s, the Maddox Brothers and Rose were the most entertaining act on the West Coast country circuit. Wild stage shows, rhinestone suits so bright they could blind you from the cheap seats. Rose standing front and center, belting with a ferocity that made grown men sit down. And they called their sound the most colorful hillbilly band in America. It wasn't just a slogan, it was a warning. But the 1950s brought a shift that almost swallowed Rose whole. As the decade opened, the Maddox Brothers started pulling back. The act began to dissolve. And Rose, a woman performing country music solo in an era when solo women were considered a commercial risk, had to decide what came next. She signed with Columbia Records. She recorded sides that were ferocious and feminine all at once. Her version of Gathering Flowers for the Master's Bouquet hit the country charts in 1959. But the mainstream Nashville machine kept her at arm's length. Too wild, too West Coast, too much. The industry wanted smooth. Rose Maddox was sandpaper. And then, quietly, almost accidentally, the rockabilly world discovered her. The musicians started talking. Guitar players started studying her recordings. When the rockabilly revival picked up steam in the 1970s and 80s, Rose Maddox was suddenly recognized not as an oddity, but as a pioneer. Her raw energy, her unrestrained delivery, she hadn't been behind the times. She'd been ahead of them. She was inducted into the Rockabilly Hall of Fame. She earned a Grammy nomination in 1983, nearly 40 years after her first recording session. 40 years. Rose Maddox didn't wait for Nashville to understand her. She just kept singing until the world caught up.
Way out in Reno, Nevada.
Number 8. Jean Shepherd. The girl who moved 500,000 records before she could vote.
I was dancing with my darling to the 10.
Here's a number that should stop you cold. In 1953, a 19-year-old girl from Pauls Valley, Oklahoma, released a duet that sold over 800,000 copies. 800,000. Her name was Jean Shepherd, and almost nobody talks about her today.
Yes, I lost my little darling the night.
A Dear John letter, recorded with Ferlin Husky for Capitol Records, was an absolute monster, one of the biggest country hits of 1953. It sat at number 1 for 6 weeks. 6 weeks. In an era when competition for country radio airplay was brutal and the charts were dominated by men. But here's the part the history books tend to skip over. Jean Shepherd was a 19-year-old woman in a business run entirely by men, are recording for a label in Los Angeles in an era when Nashville was still consolidating its power. Wearing Western outfits she could barely afford, playing bass in an all-female Western swing band called the Melody Ranch Girls just to get noticed. The success of A Dear John letter should have launched her into the stratosphere. And in some ways, it did. She followed it with Forgive Me, John, and scored another top 5 hit. Capitol believed in her enough to keep recording her. But then the decade started to turn. The late 1950s brought rockabilly, the teenager market, and a Nashville sound that was smoothing the edges off everything it touched.
My darling, And while they were
Jean Shepherd's hard country, her unvarnished twang, her refusal to soften, it started to feel, to the executives, like a liability. She kept recording. She kept charting. But the blockbuster crossover they'd hoped for never quite materialized. And then, 1964.
dancing, my friend stole my sweetheart.
A comeback that silenced every doubter. Second Fiddle to an Old Guitar hit the top 5. The hits kept coming well into the 1970s. Jean Shepherd spent over 50 years as a member of the Grand Ole Opry. 50 years on that stage.
The night they were playing.
She was inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame in 2011. By then, she'd been recording for nearly 60 years. 60 years of waiting for the industry to fully recognize what those 800,000 record buyers already knew in 1953.
With my darling to the Tennessee wall.
Number 7. Wanda Jackson, the Queen. They tried to put in a box, and this next one might be the most explosive story in the entire countdown.
Well, a hard-headed woman is a thorn in the side of a man.
Because Wanda Jackson didn't just push boundaries, she detonated them. Born in Maud, Oklahoma in 1937, Wanda Jackson was a child prodigy in the truest sense. By 15, she had her own radio show. By 16, she was touring with Hank Thompson.
You betcha, yeah!
By 17, she signed with Decca Records. And then she met Elvis Presley. In 1955, on a package tour through the South, Elvis Presley told Wanda Jackson she should try rockabilly, told her that voice, that wild, untamable instrument she'd been singing polished country with, was made for something raw, something wilder. Wanda Jackson listened. What came next was one of the most remarkable creative pivots in music history. She started recording rockabilly sides for Capitol Records, Fujiyama Mama, Let's Have a Party, Hard-Headed Woman, recordings so ferocious, so carnally charged, that radio stations refused to play them.
Well, I heard about a king who was
Refused to play them. A woman singing with that kind of abandon, that kind of heat, it made program directors nervous. It made label executives uncomfortable. They wanted her back in the country lane, safe, tidy, manageable. She wasn't interested. Fujiyama Mama was banned by some U.S. stations and went to number 1 in Japan. Number 1 in Japan.
trouble ever since the world began, but don't you? Oh, yeah, ever since the world began.
For a girl from Oklahoma singing rockabilly in 1958. The American market didn't know what to do with her, so it largely looked away. Then came the 1960s, and Wanda pivoted back to country and immediately scored her biggest domestic hit, Right or Wrong, reaching number 9 in 1961. She kept charting, kept performing, kept refusing to disappear.
Oh, yeah, ever since the world began. Oh, oh, oh.
Decade after decade, the critical reassessment kept growing. By the 2000s, rock historians were calling her the Queen of Rockabilly. Jack White produced her 2011 album, The Party Ain't Over. She was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2009, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Oh, oh, oh. A hard-headed woman is a thorn in the side of a man.
A country girl from Oklahoma who sang Too Wild for Nashville and ended up in the rock pantheon. They tried to put Wanda Jackson in a box. She burned the box down.
And a hard-headed woman is a thorn in the side of a man.
Number 6, Kitty Wells, the answer that changed everything. Before we go any further, if these stories are pulling you back into something you love about country music, go ahead and hit subscribe. There's a lot more where this came from. More deep cuts, more forgotten legends, more of the real history they don't teach you. Now, what comes next rewrote the rules entirely. Her name was Kitty Wells, and she almost never made a record at all. Born Muriel Deason in Nashville, Tennessee in 1919, Kitty Wells spent years performing regionally with her husband Johnny Wright and his duo, Johnny and Jack. She was the supporting act, the bonus, the wife who could also sing. By 1952, Decca Records was considering dropping her. The label didn't see a path forward for a woman singing hardcore honky-tonk. Women didn't sell, the thinking went. Eat Women didn't move units. Women were not the target demographic. And then Paul Cohen at Decca handed her one more song, almost as an afterthought. The song was called It Wasn't God Who Made Honky Tonk Angels. It was a direct answer record to Hank Thompson's hit The Wild Side of Life, which blamed women for men's failures in love. Kitty Wells flipped it, turned the camera around, said, "Wait a minute. You want to talk about who's really to blame?" It hit #1. And it stayed there for 6 weeks. It became the first solo record by a female artist to reach #1 on the Billboard country charts, the first in the history of country music. But the industry's reaction wasn't purely celebratory. The Grand Ole Opry initially refused to let her perform the song on their stage. They called the lyrics too suggestive, too provocative, and too pointed. Kitty Wells performed it anyway. Audiences went wild. The Opry reversed course. Over the next decade, she racked up hit after hit, making believe, paying for that backstreet affair. I Can't Stop Loving You. She became the first female country artist to earn a gold album. She was inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame in 1976. She received a Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award in 1991. But here's the line that matters. Before Kitty Wells, the Nashville establishment had a policy, spoken or unspoken, that women couldn't carry a country record. That policy died on the day It Wasn't God Who Made Honky Tonk Angels hit #1. Every woman who came after her, every single one, walked through a door that Kitty Wells kicked open with one record, one song, one woman, one moment. That's how history turns. #5, Martha Carson, the Holy Ghost of country music. There are performances that make people sit perfectly still. And then there are performances that make people lose their minds entirely. Martha Carson was the second kind. Born Irene Ambergy in Neon, Kentucky, and yes, that's a real place. She grew up in a deep mountain music tradition that blended country, bluegrass, and old-time gospel into something that had no clean category. By the late 1940s, she was recording for Capitol Records and performing on the barn dance circuit, and audiences were responding to her with a kind of fervor 40 days more, it's all right, it's all right. If you've done your best, it's all right. That made concert promoters nervous in a good way. Her 1951 recording of Satisfied was unlike anything country radio had played. It wasn't just a gospel song. It was an event. Hand clapping, foot stomping. See full-body gospel conviction delivered with a country twang sharp enough to strip paint. Eddie Arnold heard it and called it one of the most exciting records he'd ever heard. The audience at the Grand Ole Opry saw her perform live and reportedly rushed the stage. In 1951, at the Grand Ole Opry. So why isn't Martha Carson a household name today? Here's the painful part. Capitol Records didn't know how to market her. Was she country? Gospel? Something else entirely? The genre confusion kept her from getting the sustained radio push she needed. Her records sold respectably, but never broke through to the mainstream pop crossover that might have cemented her legacy. By the mid-1950s, she had moved to RCA Victor. She was performing on the same bills as Elvis Presley, who was reportedly fascinated by her stage energy, the way she commanded a crowd, the way she turned a performance into a revival meeting. There's a direct line between Martha Carson's stage presence and what Elvis Presley became as a live performer. Music historians know it. The general public doesn't. She never got the commercial breakthrough she deserved. But the musicians who watched her, they never forgot what they saw. Martha Carson didn't just sing country music. She made it feel like something holy. Number 4. Goldie Hill, the girl who hit number 1 and then disappeared.
You kissed me last night. Never been kissed like that before.
Some stories hit you fast, and some creep up on you slowly. Goldie Hill hits you fast. Born in Carn City, Texas in 1933, Goldie Hill signed with Decca Records in 1952. And almost immediately scored one of the most improbable hits in country music history. I Let the Stars Get in My Eyes, her answer to Slim Willett's Don't Let the Stars Get in Your Eyes, shot straight to number 1 on the country charts in 1953. She was 20 years old. Number 1, 20 years old. In an era when female country artists were still fighting for legitimacy. The follow-up singles charted. The bookings came in. For a brief, brilliant moment, Goldie Hill looked like the next massive female star in Nashville. And then, almost as if the industry collectively blinked, it was over. And not because of a scandal, not because of a creative failure, not because the records stopped being good. Goldie Hill met Carl Smith, married him in 1957, stepped back from her career to raise a family. It was her choice. That has to be said clearly and without judgment. It was her choice. But the music business in 1957 didn't exactly make it easy for a woman to step away and come back. The machinery moved on. The slot was filled. The radio playlists changed. She attempted comebacks in the 1960s, but the moment had passed in the way that only moments can. Not with a bang.
Thank you very much, and I'd like to sing one more number for you.
But with a slow fade. Here's the thing about Goldie Hill that deserves to be said out loud. She had the voice. She had the timing. She had the chart proof. Number 1 at 20 years old is not an accident. That's talent. The industry gave her one window, and she climbed through it, hit the top, and then life, real life, pulled her in a different direction.
I'd let you do. They'd only smear the lipstick off.
She passed away in 2005. Most country music fans under 60 have never heard her name. But for one brief year, 1953, Goldie Hill was at the very top of the mountain, and she got there on her own terms. Number 3, Wilma Lee Cooper, the voice of the mountains. There's a sound that comes from deep in the Appalachians. You know it when you hear it. It's old. It's mournful. It sounds like wood smoke and winter and something that doesn't have a name. Wilma Lee Cooper had that sound. Born in Valley Head, West Virginia in 1921, Wilma Lee grew up singing in a gospel family group called the Leary Family, performing at churches and on regional radio across the Mid-Atlantic and southern states. She met fiddler and band leader Stoney Cooper, married him, and together they built one of the most distinctive sounds in traditional country and bluegrass music. By the early 1950s, they were recording for Columbia Records and performing on the WWVA Wheeling Jamboree. A Saturday night radio barn dance broadcast out of Wheeling, West Virginia, saw that reached millions of listeners up and down the East Coast. Their recordings of Cheating Heart, not the Hank Williams song, a different composition entirely, and Come Walk With Me were raw, mountain-rooted, heartbreakingly sincere. Wilma Lee's voice had no polish on it in the commercial sense. It wasn't the Nashville sound. It wasn't smooth. It wasn't looking for crossover. It was just true. And that's exactly what made it dangerous. As the Nashville sound began dominating country radio in the late 1950s, all those lush strings, background vocals, production choices designed to appeal to pop audiences, Wilma Lee Cooper's mountain voice started sounding, to radio programmers, like something from another era. They weren't wrong. It was from another era. That was the point. She and Stoney joined the Grand Ole Opry in 1957, in but the hits that should have followed.
I want to do a song for Mother's Day, since next Sunday a week.
The wider recognition, never fully materialized in the commercial sense. After Stoney passed away in 1977, Wilma Lee kept performing, kept recording, kept carrying the mountain sound forward when most of Nashville had long since abandoned it. She performed at the Opry until just before her death in 2011. She was 89 years old, 90 years old, and still carrying Appalachian music on her back.
She'll remain the rose of my heart.
Dolly Parton has cited Wilma Lee Cooper as an influence. Emmylou Harris has spoken of her with reverence. The musicians know. Some voices are not meant for the mainstream. Some voices are meant to hold something ancient in place. To keep it alive until the world is ready to understand what it almost let die. Wilma Lee Cooper was that voice. Number 2, Betty Foley.
More in love with you.
The Shadow of a Giant. Imagine growing up with Red Foley as your father.
a heart that can be true.
Red Foley, Hall of Fame legend, one of the defining voices of early country music.
No matter what I do, for
A man whose records were played in every jukebox from Tupelo to Tacoma.
more and more I love you. And
Now imagine trying to have your own career in his shadow. Betty Foley didn't just try. For a few extraordinary years,
with you, more and more I
she nearly pulled it off completely. Born in 1933, Betty Foley inherited her father's natural gift for melody and his easy command of an audience.
slowly you're winning.
By the early 1950s, she was recording for Decca Records, the same label as her father, and performing on the Ozark Jubilee, the Springfield, Missouri-based television barn dance that her father helped anchor. Her 1956 recording of Old Moon reached the country top 10. It was warm, melancholic, is beautifully sung. A record that under different circumstances might have launched a decade-long run of hits. But the circumstances were never quite right.
And want you by my side. More
The inevitable comparisons to her father followed her everywhere. When reviewers wrote about Betty Foley, they almost always mentioned Red Foley within the first two sentences. She was Red Foley's daughter who can really sing,
be true, for slowly I'm
rather than Betty Foley who can really sing. That distinction, small on the surface, crushing in practice, colored everything.
my heart. I know you're stealing. I hope
She continued recording and performing through the late 1950s, but the breakthrough single, the moment that would have established her on her own terms, never arrived. And then life moved in another direction, as it tends to do. Here's what Betty Foley's story represents in the wider picture. The industry of the 1950s had an extremely limited number of slots for female country artists. And for a woman who had to fight both gender bias and the weight of a famous name,
in love with you. Slowly
the odds were almost impossibly stacked. She had the talent. The recordings prove it.
it can be true. Now I can't hide.
Old Moon alone is worth tracking down. It's the kind of record that makes you wonder, quietly and a little sadly,
No matter what I do, for
what an unencumbered career might have produced. Some artists carry the weight of a great name. The lucky ones get to build their own. Betty Foley deserved the chance to build her own.
slowly I'm falling. More
Number 1. Teddy Gorm? No. This spot belongs to Cousin Emmy, the woman who taught America to play banjo. We saved this one for last, and if you've never heard this name before, that's exactly why it's number 1. Because this is not a story about commercial success. This is not a story about chart positions or gold records or Hall of Fame plaques. This is a story about a woman who kept an entire musical tradition alive with her bare hands. And then watched the world take credit for it without ever speaking her name. Her name was Cynthia Mae Carver, but everybody called her Cousin Emmy. Born in Lamb, Kentucky, in 1903, Cousin Emmy was the kind of talent that comes along once in a generation and gets completely swallowed by circumstance. She could play the banjo, fiddle, guitar, auto harp, French harp, and jaw harp. Does all of them masterfully. She could yodel. She could call square dances. She could make an audience of 500 people feel like she was performing specifically for each one of them individually. In the 1940s, she recorded, "Ruby, Are You Mad at Your Man?" A driving, hypnotic banjo piece that became one of the most influential recordings in the entire old-time music canon. The Osborne brothers heard it, recorded it. Their version hit the country charts in 1969. 20 years after Cousin Emmy's original, and introduced the song to a whole new generation. Most people who know "Ruby, Are You Mad?" know the Osborne brothers version. Almost nobody goes back to find Cousin Emmy. She performed on the Grand Ole Opry in the 1940s. She appeared on early television. She worked the road with a relentlessness that would break most people. Small venues, county fairs, schoolhouse shows, anywhere there was an audience. And then the industry moved on. The 1950s brought the Nashville sound, and Cousin Emmy's raw, mountain-dipped, pre-commercial, old-time style. Was about as far from the Nashville sound as you could get without leaving the country altogether. She kept performing. Into the 1960s, as the folk revival swept college campuses and young people started reaching back toward roots music, Cousin Emmy was rediscovered, briefly, by the folk world. She performed at festivals. She was praised by scholars and musicologists who understood exactly what they were looking at. But the mainstream commercial machine never claimed her. The history books never gave her the chapter she deserved. She passed away in 1980. Here's the line I want you to sit with. Every banjo player who came after her, every single one, owed something to the way Cousin Emmy played. The driving, three-finger approach, the percussive, locomotive rhythm. The idea that a woman with a banjo could be the most commanding presence in any room. She taught it. She demonstrated it. She kept it alive through the lean years when nobody was paying attention, and then the world learned it from someone else. Cousin Emmy wasn't a footnote. She was a foundation stone. And someone built a mansion on that stone and forgot to put her name on the door.